And my name's Todd Lyden. I'm the Small Business Center Director at Bladen Community College. And we've been doing this series of what I'm calling the Rural Marketing Roundup, a free conference call every second Friday since the summer. We had to push back this week in November to the 15th due to a conference I was at last week. And but this was a great topic. We wanted to make sure we got this one in before the end of the year, especially with a lot of stuff that's been going on. It's using press releases. Of course, the Small Business Center network is throughout the entire state of North Carolina, which is very rural. And we were just talking about the fact that newspapers are in decline, but it's still a great opportunity. And I always remind folks, we do a wide variety of different things, seminars, webinars, and even conference calls, obviously, that are service all throughout the state. So I always remind folks, if you point your car in one direction and usually drive probably about 30 minutes, you're going to hit a community college where a small business center is, where you can take advantage of all the resources that we have. Today, I've got my counterpart from Catawba Valley Community College, Jeff Neuville, who is a professional at this. He's been running a podcast, Jeff, for how many years now?
Gosh, it's been like 5 or 6. We were podcasting before podcasting was cool.
Oh, well, that's great. See, you and I both have faces for this kind of stuff. So
that's right. We're built for audio.
I'm built for audio. So I'll let you. I know you've got a great little itinerary for us. So I'll let you steal the platform for a couple minutes. I'll just hang back and let you roll.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate in your calls and enjoy what you're doing with your small business center and everything going on there. I'm glad that other folks throughout the state can tap into it. But again, my name's Jeff Neuville. I'm the Small Business Center Director at Catawba Valley Community College in Hickory, North Carolina. So we're closer to the western part of the state. We call it the foothills here. And we're about an hour north of Charlotte. And been doing this for about 7 years. But when I think about press releases, and Todd asked me to speak to putting them together and distributing them, my mind very quickly goes to newspapers. And my father was a newspaper reporter when I was growing up in New Jersey with the Bergen County Record. So sort of at a young age was exposed to newspapers, and I've always had a great admiration and love for them. But I went to the University of North Carolina and was the photography editor there and worked on the Daily Tar Heel there, and spent a lot of time doing that when I was a younger person. And then when I moved back to Hickory, North Carolina, which is where I spent most of my growing up part, and I actually was writing a weekly column for our newspaper here, the Hickory Daily Record. So I've got I've had a lot of interaction with newspapers as I've grown up and worked in my professional career. So when I think about press releases, I my first thought goes to newspapers. But with that said, the current situation with newspapers, and particularly rural newspapers, unfortunately, is a bit grim in that there are now over 65 million Americans who live in counties that only have one local paper or have none at all. And if you start looking at some of the reasons why, newspaper advertising revenue peaked back in 2006 at around $50 billion. And then by last year, 2018, it was coming in around $20 billion. And I don't think there's any great mystery of what's going on out there. There's just so much free content online at this point in time, and that's how many people are getting their information. And obviously a lot of papers have moved to an online format. And also, if you look, much of the competition is coming from Google and Facebook. A lot of people are getting their news, and sometimes I question whether news is the right word, but they're getting their information from Google, Facebook, social media. And actually, Google and Facebook account actually, I had the number here. It's like 58% of digital advertising nationally goes through Google and Facebook. But if you look at local markets, they're accounting for 77% of digital advertising dollars, which is really putting a squeeze on local papers. So there's some difficult trends out there, and Todd and I were talking a little before people got on the call today of news that we just heard this week. There's a merger between the two largest newspaper owners in the country, Gatehouse Media and Gannett, who are going to be merging their companies, and they have 550 newspapers between them. The deal is, they're saying the deal is going to save over $300 million a year, and they haven't specified where they're coming from. But if I worked on those papers, I think I would be nervous, and then I assume there's going to be some job reductions. So that's a bit scary. And also there was news that came out this week that McClatchy, which owns some of the larger papers in North Carolina, including the Charlotte Observer and the Raleigh News and Observer, are saying that they're going to stop printing newspapers on Saturdays. They're going to just have an online digital publication on Saturday to save money. So they've got the Charlotte paper, they've got the Raleigh paper, they also have the Herald Sun in Durham. So things going on there. So there's some trends going on that are very challenging to local papers. The successful local papers are really the ones that have a keen focus on what's going on in their local community. Because if we want national news, we're going to be looking online at CNN or Fox News or where we might be getting your news. If I want to see who won the Browns-Steelers football game last night on Thursday Night Football, I'm not going to be looking at my local paper. I'm going to be looking on ESPN.com or watching the Sports Center. So there are plenty of sources to cover the big national news, but really the value of local papers and rural papers is if they're able to really embed themselves in the community and be significant to their communities. That's really the challenge that they face. So that's sort of the situations out there. So you think about it in this terms. Many businesses are focused on their expenses, and newspapers, obviously, when you look at the advertising revenues and the things going on with them, they're no different. They're looking to figure out how they can be more lean, how they can be more operational, operate more efficiently. So, the fact of the matter is that most of them are understaffed, and if you, as a small business owner or someone thinking about starting a small business, can provide them with a properly written, well-written press release that focuses more on news, and we're not just selling things, but we're really trying to find newsy type things, then there's a pretty high degree of high possibility that they're going to run it. And if you can spell and you can write incomplete sentences, there's a decent chance they might run it just the way you send it to them. So it's a tool in your marketing kit that you should be using, and we're going to talk a little bit about how you can go about writing the press release. We're going to talk about the types of things that you should be writing a press release about. We'll talk a little bit about how you could go about building a list to send your press release to, and provide some additional tips to it. So that's sort of the agenda that I've got lined up for you today. So I'll take a quick breath and say, Todd, any comments that you'd like to make, or any questions or comments that anybody on the line wants to make at this point in time?
I unmuted everybody, so if anybody has a quick question or wants to make sure they get the questions answered. We'll take them now real quick. So to what Jeff said was that because of it's not just newspapers, obviously we talk about that a lot.
Right.
But you see radio stations are seeing kind of similar problems in rural areas and a lot of other places. So we're trying to make sure that it's not just that, but a really good example. One of the things we'll put together is at the end of this, I'm taking notes, and if you're interested, I'll have all the information gathered in a reasonable place. We did a little bit of looking. But one really good example for a newspaper model, if you don't have one in your area, is right next door to me in Columbus County, Whiteville, there's an old family newspaper that's still independent. It's called the News Reporter. They were just recognized recently for, unlike a lot of their counterparts, either selling to the larger places or just folding altogether, they've seen increased revenue in the past couple of years through a couple of different model changes that they've made. So it can work. It's just a matter of making sure. And then the opportunities that do exist is, as Jeff was pointing out, is with newspapers struggling, they'll welcome that opportunity. Any quick questions? Otherwise, we'll go back to mute and we'll let Jeff run it. He's got like I said, he's got a nice little suggestion here for us. Ready?
Okay. Todd, can you hear me?
I hear you perfectly. Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the types of events or situations that you should be considering running a press release for. You mentioned that newspaper advertising dollars are down, and when you're a small business owner, I guess the way I always think about it is that we're trying to advise our small business owner clients on how to effectively get the word out without having to spend a lot of dollars. And despite my love of newspapers and my desire to want them to succeed, and we'll talk about alternatives to newspapers as well for your press release, but we're talking about submitting press releases that we hope are going to be put in these publications for no fee, because number one, they are more newsy in terms of the information that you're providing to them, and you're really trying to stick to the facts and not, this isn't, hey, there's going to be a Thanksgiving Day sale at my retail store. If you want to advertise that, the newspapers need your advertising dollars. They're happy to charge you to advertise that. So we're really trying to find opportunities for you to get the good word out about your business in a more news-oriented fashion. So, what are the sort of things that you should be considering putting out a press release for? Number one, I'll throw a few out, and it's not meant to be an all-encompassing list, but just to get you thinking. So, number one, if you're opening a business, the grand opening, you're launching a new business, whether it's a brick-and-mortar physical location, whether it's a home-based retail business or consulting service, whatever type business, press release is very appropriate for announcing, hey, there's a new business out there. Newspapers just by their nature, they report all the catastrophic things happening in the world. So when there is good news, they're usually pretty happy to run with it. So if there's a new business opening in their area, they want to trumpet it. So starting a new business, whether it be a physical location, whether it be an online business, whether it be a service business, is a good reason for sending out a press release. if there are some sort of major milestones in your business or accomplishments or awards. Have you been recognized? You know, Todd has probably been recognized as being the small business center of the year or the millennial. I hope he's sending out press releases when he gets that sort of recognition. You know, if your business has received some recognition, some sort of award, you know, that's the sort of thing you want your community, you want people to know about that and know that you're doing good works. So, you know, if there's a major milestone, if you're celebrating your business's 5th anniversary and doing something to recognize that, that's something that you should consider putting out some sort of press release for. If your business is doing good works in the community, if you're participating in some sort of community event, you know, that is another opportunity for you to position yourself as someone that's involved in your community. Get the word out about your business. You know, again, you're building your brand. You're trying to have your business's name in people's minds on a regular basis. So we're looking for those opportunities. So if you're participating in some sort of community event, giving back to the community, that's something that you should be telling the community about, both about the event that you're participating in and your company as well. Another idea, if you've received funding here locally in Hickory, just this week there was an announcement that came out that one of our local businesses, Advanced Hydrogen Technologies, which is a startup business, received a grant from a group called NC Idea in Raleigh, and they're putting out a press release to let people know about that, and that you know, the community wants to support them, and you know, good news, good information, and continues to get that information out. So you know, that sort of thing is something as well. And even if you're contemplating doing a crowdfunding campaign, if you're putting a crowdfunding campaign together, that's something that you'd want people to know about and hopefully participate in. And crowdfunding is a whole separate topic that I'm sure could carry one of these roundtable conversations. But if you're out there working with Kickstarter or another crowdfunding platform, that would be an opportunity as well. If you have been appointed to a board or committee, you know, here in my area we have the city government has a business development committee. You know, so if you're going to be joining that committee, that would be another opportunity for you to make sure that your community knows that you're connected, that you're participating, and find a way to include information about your business there. Are you speaking at an event, or have you received some sort of professional certification or achieved some sort of professional accomplishments? So those would be opportunities where you can say, hey, Jeff is going to be participating in the Rural Roundtable, you know, put out a press release. And actually, if you checked our Facebook business page for our Small Business Center, you would have found that we had put something out there announcing that we're participating in this, so people can get to hear my golden pipes, you know, talking with Todd about press releases. I know they're not that golden, but anyway, another opportunity to get the word out there. If your business has a new product or made changes to an existing product or added some additional services, that would be worthy of some sort of press release. You know, you're expanding your business. You know, that's news. You know, you don't have to make it too sales oriented, but you can say, hey, we've added a certain product line, or you know, we've expanded our service to encompass these areas. That qualifies as news. So that's an opportunity to get the word out there. If you've made a new hire or added a new person to your staff, you know, that's another press release opportunity. So keep that one in mind. If you are involved in acquiring a new company or partnering with somebody, those are great opportunities to send out press releases. And again, you're staying in the news. And something that we'll hit on as we go is, we're throwing out lots of different ideas here. One of the things that's going to be important as you think about using press releases is having some consistency of information. If you send out one press release every 6 months, it can get lost out there. For some reason, it's stuck in my head that before I remember a company or a new product or whatever, I've got to see it 6 or 7 times. I've got to see a commercial 6 or 7 times before it's going to really stick in my head. It's really the same with your business. You want to be reminding people on a regular basis that you're out there, that you're doing things. So you're trying to find reasons to put press releases out on a regular basis. Is it something that you can do once a month, once a quarter? But not just something that happens once a year. We're trying to build brand recognition, so we want to get our business's name and out there on a regular basis, so people remember who we are. So that was sort of a list of opportunities, and as Todd said, I've got a few links that I used as I was putting this together that I'll share with Todd, and he can put out on some show notes or web links and share it with you as well. So take some notes, but we'll also give you some links that you can go back to so that you can revisit some of this information as well. So anyway, that's just opportunities. Again, we're looking for more news-oriented opportunities there. As you're thinking about it, we're not just doing sell. There are times and places for that as well. But when it comes to writing the press release, we're really trying to focus more on the facts and news type things, and not as much come to the Thanksgiving sale, come to the Christmas sale, this sort of thing. So those are some opportunities to be thinking about as you go forward. Todd, anything you want to add there in terms of those opportunities? I had a suggestion
before, because I know you're going to talk about the media list, and for folks to make sure they have that, and as they start thinking about that, I mean, that might be one of the very first places they look, is to look at their local paper, what's being covered, how it's being covered, and no matter which media format we're talking about, what they're looking for, what they're putting out, and how they put it out, obviously would be the opportunity to see what kind of stuff that they're looking for. And in some cases, if it's not being covered, maybe it's an opportunity. So that if they're thinking of trying to figure out, give them some really good ideas, but there may be some opportunity there for information that that they're looking for. They can get ideas from the platforms that they're looking at.
Sounds good. Good point. So we sort of talked about the types of information that typically you'll want to consider for a news release, and taking a step back, I will say that you can differentiate a little bit between a press release, which is really more news focused, and more of a feature story. In that sometimes newspapers or publications would write will accept a longer story. For example, if you are working with a particular client and having great success, and you might want to see if you could write up a little story about that client and subtly let readers know the way that you assisted them to help make your client successful. That's really beyond the press release. It's more, I would qualify that as a feature story, and there are times and places where that might be in use as well. And we can talk a little bit about that later. But there are other options out there that you might be doing, whether it be blogging or submitting stories to different publications or including them in your website or social media feeds that you can use to show off your customers, but also show off the ways that you're assisting your customers and providing value to those customers. So anyway, another thought out there as we go forward. So we've talked about the various opportunities that you have for writing a press release. Let's talk about what should be in the press release. How do you write a good press release? What should be included in the press release? And my Corona typewriter is in mothball somewhere at this point in time. So I do write press releases for our small business center that I send out to a list of publications and radio stations and whatnot in my local area when we're doing workshops and whatnot. And the way I do it is by email these days. So I'm not sending out a paper press release to anybody and going through the good old postal service. We're doing things electronically, and would encourage you to do that as well. So what should be included in what you send to various outlets or what you're posting? Number one, think about writing a good headline that is going to be brief but catch the attention of your readers. Usually, if you're sending out an email, you have a subject line. I will usually put press release on it. Then with behind that or after that, put in that subject line some information such as, CVC. My small business center is hosting a workshop on using social media to promote your business on Monday, November 18th. And then I would probably make that a little bit smaller and say, small business center hosting free small social media workshop. And then in my email, I would also include a headline that potentially a publisher might use. It's, again, we're putting together press releases that we hope they're going to use the way we write them, but that's certainly not, they're not required to do that. We're going to try to make it easy for them so they don't have to do much work. So, you're going to put together a headline that briefly describes, a grand opening or whatever we're writing about, that hopefully captures the attention of our readers, and if we're sending it to somebody, captures the attention of the people that we hope will be putting it in their publication. And then we really think about this in more of an inverted pyramid type way, where we're going to get the most important information in the beginning of the press release. Let's get the facts out there. Let's remember the what, the when, the who, the where. If I'm sending out a press release about an upcoming seminar, I'm going to make sure that in that very first paragraph I'm saying, here's what the topic is, here's when it is going to be held, here's where it's going to be held. I'm getting those key things in. If you're having a grand opening, you want to make sure that people find you. That you want to make sure people know when it is. So you want to make sure that you're getting that information in there right up at the beginning, because if you're, most readers will read the first paragraph, might get to the second, third paragraph, but it's hard to always get them to the end of a story, of a press release, of whatever. So you want to make sure you get the key information at the beginning of your press release. It's important that you list your contact information up at the top of your press release in case there are some questions or someone wants to get back to you. So this isn't in the body of your press release, which we're going to type up, but you're going to want to include your name, the name of your organization, a phone number, an email address, all at the top of your information. You can say for more information, or you can just say contact information or whatnot. But make sure you get that contact information where it's going to be easy to find you, so that if you send it to somebody, they need some more information, they have questions, they're not going to be struggling to get back to you. We want to make this as easy and simple as possible for whomever is receiving your press release. So make sure you've got your contact information up there. So you've got your contact information, you got a nice headline that attracts their attention, gives them information about what we're talking about. We've got our first paragraph, which has the basic information that we want to cover. As you get through the press release, if you want to elaborate a little bit more on the event or the award or whatever the newsy type thing is that we're talking about, you can use the second, third paragraph to talk a little bit about the details, the specifics of what the news event is. So you can do that. Usually we have some boilerplate standard information about our organization, about our small business center that is a paragraph in length of who we are, what we do. And you want to use this as an opportunity to make sure that people understand what your company is and what you do. So if you can put a small paragraph together about our company is the largest distributor of plumbing equipment in the county or whatever. Here's the services that we provide. You'd want to include that boilerplate. And as I said earlier, consistency is important. So including some sort of standard information about your company and what you do, you want to keep it fairly brief, but you want to have that consistency out there so that people when they're going through their press releases, they say, "Oh yeah, I remember that company. They were involved in this community activity. They hired Joe Smith last month. I remember reading about them." People start to remember who you are, what you do. There's that consistency out there. It's obviously, I say obviously, you got spell check out there. You need to use it. You want to make sure that there are not typos in your press release. You're putting something out to the public that is representative of your company. So let's do it professionally. Let's make sure that you've got proper. You've got complete sentences. I write better than I talk, obviously, so it's going to be in complete sentences. We're going to check for typos. We're going to write in the same tense. We're not going to go back and forth between future tense and past tense and current tense. You want to write a clear, well-written press release. And I will say that our small business center here, I'll send out a template to some of our clients just to sort of give them a little bit of format information, and if they'd like, I'm happy to review it for them before they send it out to just provide some quick editing assistance. As I said, I've got some newspaper in my background, so sometimes I can't help myself to do a little bit of editing for people. It's not something I do on a regular basis. If it did, I'd probably have to find a new profession. But I'm willing to do that for people, and I'm going to volunteer Todd for that as well. So I'm sure he'd be happy to look at it for you as well. So traditionally, press releases end as sort of a signal to people in the newspaper business with 3 number signs, number sign, number sign, number sign, at the end of your press release centered. And that's sort of an indicator to people traditionally in the newspaper business that this is the end of the press release. And probably other people recognize it as well, and it sort of just signifies that you're done there. So to sort of summarize again and revisit, we talked about making sure that you've got a good headline both in the subject if you're sending this out by email and the subject line for your email and in the body of your email. You've got contact information so that people can see you. We're using an inverted pyramid, so you're putting the most important information, the who, what, when, where type information, up at the beginning of your press release. We're including some additional information about the newsy event in paragraphs 2 and 3. We're probably including some standard boilerplate information about your company in there, maybe paragraph 4. And I didn't mention it, but it's also good to maybe throw a quote in there from you or the person. If you hired someone, they're gonna tell you how thrilled and happy they are and to be joining the company and what wonderful things we're going to be doing. So feel free to put a quote in there as well and include that as well. So those are sort of the key things that you should be considering. And again, I was differentiating between a press release where we're focusing more on news and we're sticking to the facts. That's really what you're doing there, versus more of a feature story, which you've got a little bit more opportunity to focus on. I don't want to say creative writing, but you've just got a little bit more room there as you're going forward. So, and just a few other things. You would be surprised at how much space paragraphs take up in. Again, I'm approaching this from a newspaper perspective, but if you put 3 paragraphs together, it's going to actually take up more space in a newspaper than you would think when you do a column. When I wrote a weekly business column for our paper, they would give me our local newspaper in Hickory, and Hickory's a town of about 40,000 people, and I really don't know what the circulation of the paper is these days. Not as much as it used to be, but I used to have a column that I would write about local business things, and basically I would have approximately 500 words to write it, and that would be one column of the newspaper from top to bottom. And if I got much over 500 words, it wasn't going to fit. So, if you're wordy, you need to really work on cutting that down and really trying to take out unnecessary things out of your press releases. So, focus on the facts. Try to be brief where you can. Make sure that it's easy to find you. Put your contact information in. It's not a bad idea at the end of your press release before you end it. Just say, for more information, contact Jeff Neuville with an email address or a website. Or you can find out more information at your website and include it. And that's another way that you're promoting your business, helping people find your business. So consider doing that as you're putting your press release together. So that's sort of Jeff's tips for effectively writing a press release. Todd, you want to add anything to our press release format there?
I'd sort of interrupt and let you ask a question for a second, and then I was just going to add. I guess this will probably get into where you're going to go in a second. But one thing that occurred to me is over time we've mentioned it's not just for newspapers. I've realized most of them are not even. There's a lot of times it's now become Neuville to call them media releases, not just press releases. We keep saying press release, but now they're calling them media releases. And there's a website in North Carolina, and I'm sure it's just some probably out of work reporter who was trying to drum up some business, but they created ncheadlines.com, which is a release service, and there's a lot of paid release services that exist. I'm not sure what their I don't know if they have a pricing structure or not, but they also have some good examples on there, which of course is pretty easy to find. The way you're describing, especially when you're saying, like the format's pretty good and standard, but then there's a lot of good options and models to take a look at, not feel like you have to stick to you want to, like you said, you want to get the headline and nail that pretty good, but then and also probably with brevity, make sure you're getting everything you want to get in there. But the other thing that's very beneficial, especially if you submit it to the online services, is if it's well written and it's got good keywords and all those things that search engines like, it's ultimately going to help your web presence. So.
I guess my head's been, whether we call it media releases, press releases, but that's what I've been thinking about. I think whenever we give out any marketing advice, I think we'll always talk to people about, who are your customers? Who are you trying to reach? Mm-hmm. Because ultimately we're trying to get this information in front of them. If you have a local business and there are local newspapers out there, for sure you want to be making sure that you're getting included in your local publications. You may have an online business with a much greater reach than your local community, and if that's the case, yes, the press release distribution services that are going to give you a much broader release and bigger distribution are going to be things that you need to be focusing on as well. So, as you're contemplating who you want to be sending out your press releases to, the first question you need to be asking yourself is, who are my customers, and where do they get their information, because that's where you want to be. So,
excellent.
So anyway, but that's the sort of the segue to sort of our final major segment of we talked about consistency and getting your information out on a regular basis and sort of building your brand name, building your brand reputation. So that's great that we've got this information. How do we get it out? Where do we get it out to? And I'll start by saying what we do at my small business center. As I said, I write press releases, and we've built a list of about 20 local publications, and again, I'm promoting workshops to a fairly local audience. So we have a combination of local newspapers, local publications. There are some free publications that are distributed here locally in the community that we include in our distribution list. Radio stations, and also some nonprofit resource groups, and by that I mean we'll send out information to our local Chamber of Commerce, who they put out a biweekly e-blast newsletter to all of their members. So they're often trying to promote good works in the community, particularly for their members. But if there are resources that assist their members, they're often willing to include that information in their publications as well. So you should be thinking about newsy type organizations. You should also be thinking about resource type organizations. From my perspective, if I have clients that I'm working with in our community as our local small business center, I put out a monthly newsletter to our community saying, here are some of the things going on, and I'll also include information about the clients that we're working with that are opening their businesses if they're having a grand opening. So, your Small Business Center, your SBTDC, your Chamber of Commerce. These are resource organizations that might be able to assist you in getting information about your organization out, your company out. If it's more news oriented, sort of depending on what sort of reach they have and how they go about doing it. Todd mentioned the importance of keywords, because publishing your press release on your website or your other online opportunities is an outstanding way to help promote your business, get it out there. So if you have a if you have a website, you want to be updating that on a regular basis. You might have a tab that has current news or current information about your organization, where you can be adding press release information directly to your website, and hopefully you've got the right keywords that might be searched on by potential customers who are going to be more likely to find you that way. If LinkedIn is you've got opportunities to publish and promote yourself on LinkedIn, and I sort of cringe a little bit when I say promote yourself, and that you are promoting your business, and you should be promoting your business. If you don't trumpet your own business, don't wait for someone else to do it. But when we're talking about press release and news, we're trying to do this in more of a newsy type fashion, and trying to make people aware of things going on in the community. So it's very appropriate for you to be using LinkedIn, if you've got a LinkedIn profile, to put press releases about your business or updates and news and information there. If you're on social media, which many businesses, most businesses are using in some fashion to promote themselves, whether it be developing a Facebook business page, people do use Twitter. I'm not. I'm more of a quiet Twitter stalker that reads information, and I don't really use that as a way to promote my business. But again, let's go back to who your customers are, and if your customers are likely to be following you on Twitter and heavy Twitter users, you should be linking information in your Twitter account to your press releases. And again, let's think about who your customers are. Let's think about how they get their information, and which social media platforms that they're using. And let's make sure that you are using the right ones, and reaching out to your customers there. So feel free to choose the right ones there, on the right social media ones. Todd mentioned that there are distribution services out there, and there are some free ones, and I've dabbled with them, and I don't consider myself an expert with them. There are some free ones out there, a few of them, and Todd, I'll send you a link to an article I found on that. PR Log, LOG is one of the free ones, and I think they all have some sort of free services, and then they've got some fee-based services that you can use to get further out there. So PR Log is one that you can check out. A few more. Newswire Today is another. PR.com and Online PR Media are four that I came across that do have some free elements to them that you can be using to increase the distribution of your press releases, and you can do some experimenting on how far do you get with their free services. You consider some of their paid services there. Again, it really depends on who you're trying to reach, what your goals are, what your budget is, but there are services out there as well. And we talked about some of the local publications, but I think you should also be targeting trade publications or publications more specific to your industry. So if there are trade publications, and Todd mentioned ncheadlines.com, there's also North Carolina business magazines that are out there that do have information about local businesses. So there are other North Carolina publications promoting businesses. There are trade publications that you should be focused upon. So those are just some other areas that you should be looking to get your information out on. Todd, do you have some other thoughts on outlets that people should be considering as they go forward?
Well, I bring this back to our rural side, and I'm going to open it up in a second, but I want to make sure if anybody else wants to get in, if you're on the phone, make sure you keep your stuff muted so that the noise in the background doesn't pick up. But a couple of things, we've talked a lot about the newspapers, and in particular because I think with the consolidations, with the decline, in particular in rural areas, even though I thought I read some stat that it's kind of 50-50 where they're in larger decline, which means that in larger areas, just outside your rural area, presents that opportunity to get it out a little bit wider. You don't feel like you just have to put it into your own local market, that it can go out a little bit broader. And then hopefully, and with that consolidation, you're seeing some of these papers where you'll put it into, I know with Gatehouse in particular, which has quite a few in our area, including Jacksonville, Fayetteville, Wilmington, I think. When you put it in one, a lot of times it gets carried in another. So, and I think you're seeing that with a lot of the consolidated ones, so it's a good opportunity there. But as you mentioned, not just the services, and magazines particularly, you see a lot of, because they're monthly or quarterly, whether they're trade or regional or local or whatever. And then a couple things we don't tend to talk about because of the pricing, but I would think that even in those media, whether it's TV or radio, do have community announcements and things like that where, if you have a release that goes to them as well, which is why you do, like you're describing, want to put together a full-blown media list so you have consistency. And in most cases, you can just send an email. You don't have to worry about sending out anything special. Just send an email to all of the above kind of, and hope for the best, and make sure it's targeted, as you've reminded us over and over again, to that's where you want it to be because your customers are there.
Yeah, and I think that's good thoughts. And as I said, we've got in our area, we've got a couple of local AM radio stations, and we send it out to them. And again, there's no guarantee that that these people are going to run the press release, but if we're dealing with organizations that they're struggling with their staffing issues as well. So if they're getting free content that is appropriate and well written, and that increases the chances that it's going to be used. And just a few final thoughts that I'll throw out there that people can be thinking about, and some that we've touched on. But consistency is important in that people are going to be more likely to be running, using the information you provide, whether it be publications, newspapers, radio stations, TV, is, if they see that they're receiving things from you on a regular basis, I think it just gives them the comfort level that this is a legitimate source, and not someone who is just sending me something once for that I'm never going to hear from again, or they're going to fall off the face of the earth. So try to maintain some consistency. related to that is you're really trying to build a relationship. Through that consistency, you're building a relationship with these publications. I apologize if I'm harping too much on the newspaper piece of it, but whether it's a trade publication that you've got enough experience with where you can call up the editor or the publisher of that publication to say, hey, here's a story idea that you might want to consider. When it doesn't always have to be about your business. I mean, hopefully you're providing some useful information to them so that when they do get something from you and your business, they're more likely to use it because they see you as a legitimate source. So, you're trying to build some relationships, and I'm at a point where I can call people at my local newspaper and say, hey, we're doing this event. I think it would really be good if you guys would cover this one. I mean, as opposed to me sending you a press release, just because I think it's going to be a good fit for your publication, and sometimes they've got the resources to do that, sometimes they don't, but at least you're building that relationship there so that you can have more credibility with them there. We both Todd and I have mentioned the importance of building a list that you can send information out to on a regular basis, and whether that's online sources, whether it's local publications, whether it's the radio stations or all the above. I'm sort of got mine set up in a group on my email so that when I want to send out information, I can just click on that group and get it out pretty efficiently and effectively. So you want to work on building that list and making sure it's getting to the right people there. And last thing I'll throw out there is timing of when you want. Think about when your event is occurring and when you want that information to be released, so that if it does get into your local paper or gets released by your local chamber or whatnot, so that you're providing it to people at the right time, so that it's number one, it was last week, that's not good. You probably don't want it to release it too early so that it's getting to the public 2 months from when your event is, because they will in all likelihood forget about it by then. Although it's not always a bad idea to release it more than once, but if there's something that you want people to participate in or attend, be thinking about when you want people to see that to give them the most chance to actually take advantage of that opportunity. So is that a week in advance? Is it a few days in advance? Be thinking about that so that you send out your information with enough time for it to get into that publication or onto that radio station, and have your desired effect there. So, just some additional things to be thinking about as you develop your releases and develop your list and get it out to your population.
I've unmuted it. I've unmuted folks, and if you have questions, real quick, while we wrap this up, we're almost at the tail end of our hour. There's noise again.
Yes, I have a question. Hello.
Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to know. Oh gosh, I just totally forgot. Oh good. I'm sorry.
That's okay. While you're doing that, Jeff was very between both the consistency, the timeliness, and making sure.
I'm already up and about till 7:10.
Oh dear. We're gonna mute. Between the last one I had was make sure somebody else reads it.
Oh yes.
It's very easy within an organization, or if you're by yourself, to become very enamored with your own text, and you submit it without having somebody else take a quick proofread. And I know technology can help, but technology can't always catch those spelling errors that aren't really spelling errors, and certain grammatical things. you do want to make sure that what you send makes sense to other people who would read it eventually. So.
Yeah, I mean, and that's good advice. And that if you send something to somebody and it's not well written, or if it's poorly written and it does have typos, they're in all likelihood not going to, they're going to discard it pretty quickly, and perhaps the next time they get something from you, they might not even be opening it. So making sure it's coherent and complete sentences and is good. And some people, we all bring our skills to the table, and some people are very comfortable writing stuff, and other people are not. So it's okay to ask for help on that stuff.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, yes, I remembered. Now, I wanted to know if when you send out the press release, especially if it's an event, is it a good time then to ask for an interview or feature story, or maybe if they would come out and cover the event, or should that be a separate email to someone more specific?
In my view, that would be, I guess I would approach it by first sending out a press release to whomever you're trying to send it out to, and then probably making a separate contact, with someone. I don't know if you're thinking newspaper or who you're trying to get out.
Television, newspaper, newspaper, and video. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd make separate contacts. I mean, I would try to do some homework on, if it's a newspaper if I'm looking at that paper and seeing an individual who covers these types of events, I might contact that individual directly and say, hey, just by the way, we're having this grand opening. It looks like you cover our local businesses. I think this would be great if you could attend it. One of the challenges, as we've talked about, is that a lot of local papers just don't have the staff to attend all these functions. So it's not always a bad idea for you after the event to say, take a picture or something and include that with something saying, hey, Jeff's restaurant had its grand opening on Friday, and here's a picture, and they're now serving the best tacos in the land or whatever. But I think we've also seen that newspapers will accept photographs, and again, they're not required to. So don't let it discourage you if they don't always run things that you send them or run it the way that you'd like. But the more consistency and continuity you build up with them, the more likely they are to actually run the stuff that you send to them. So if you can't get them to cover it, you cover it. Send them a press release after the fact, and hopefully they might include that information as well.
Very good. Well, thank you. This has been very informative.
Thanks for joining us.
We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We'll wrap up if we've got any last questions. But the last thing I want to thank Jeff. That was some really great stuff, Jeff. I shouldn't be surprised, but you do know your stuff, so that's great. But there's a lot of great I think there's a lot of opportunity, especially in local markets, for folks to take advantage of these things that they don't necessarily think of right out of the gate, especially when I have experience with it. So we do want to encourage it. Next month, kind of going with something that Jeff kind of mentioned was, if you could tag on to a cause, we're going to be covering right after Giving Tuesday in December. We'll be talking about how to market at a local level, at a rural market. If you've got a nonprofit, or we're not just going nonprofits, but if you have a local cause, how can you take advantage of not just Giving Tuesday, but how do you get it out there at that level for that kind of stuff? And I'm sure we'll make sure I mention a couple of your great tips with sending out press releases.
That sounds good, and from the shameless plug division, I do co-host a podcast called the Entrepreneur Exchange that people can find on the Mesh podcast network, and I'm counting on you, Todd, as being one of our guests in January to talk about various apps and software programs that can assist small businesses and startups for their new year, so they get their new year started off right. So people should be looking for that as well.
Well, you have a lot of great stuff on there in general, not just me. So I appreciate that. Well, we thank everybody for being here. We're just past the hour mark. I don't want to keep anybody any longer than that. We try to be timely. You could find previous recordings, and this will be eventually up on YouTube, hopefully within the next either today or maybe even Monday, depending on how busy I have to get today. But we do put our recordings up, and we do have some past ones from the past phone calls on rural marketing speciality. So thanks again, and thank you to Jeff Neuville from Catawba Valley.
All right. Thank you, Todd. You have a great day.
Everybody have a great day. Thanks.
Bye-bye.